Welcome back to my channel. Today, an incredible story that happened to two families from the United States. How might someone feel who has been happily married for many years, but suddenly learns that his other half has had another family and led a parallel existence all this time? It is hard to imagine, however, as is well known, it is life that writes the most original scenarios, and the following criminal case is perfect proof of this. It's the night of April 30th to May 1st, 1999, when 52-year-old Eliette Dominique runs into the intensive care unit of a hospital in Brooklyn in New York. The woman is shaken and weeping, and this state is fully justified. She has just learned that her husband has been in an accident, as a result of which he suffered very serious injuries and could die practically at any moment. Eliette's only thought is that she would like more than anything to be able to say goodbye to him in time. Extremely upset, the woman finally runs to the room where she has learned her husband is located. She pays no attention to the nurse, intent on barring her entrance, and opens the door with all her strength, then stands in the doorway and freezes motionless. Yes, in the small room her husband, Jean-Claude, is lying in bed. He is wrapped in bandages and connected to various medical devices. Eliette, who is a certified nurse by the way, could have expected exactly such a sight, and that is by no means the reason she is still standing in the doorway as if petrified. What stuns her is the fact that a woman she doesn't know at all is sitting by Jean-Claude's bedside and holding his hand. "Who are you?" This stranger, it seems, is no less surprised, and is also unable to get a word out. Finally, Eliette shakes off the initial shock. "Who are you?" she asks indignantly. "And who are you?" replies the woman sitting by the bed. "I am his wife," says Eliette in a raised voice, pointing with her hand at the unconscious patient. "I am his wife," exclaims the strange woman and rises from her chair. Eliette takes a step toward her and starts shouting, "Listen, my name is Eliette Dominique, and this is my husband Jean-Claude Dominique. We are 20 years married and have 2 children. Please get out of here immediately." The stranger shouts even louder that her name is Betsy Dominique, she has 2 children with Jean-Claude. Suddenly she adds, "I already know, you are Jean-Claude's first wife, but after all, you divorced 17 years ago. Now I am his rightful spouse." The two of them jump at each other and a tug-of-war begins. At this point, a doctor rushes into the room and immediately orders them to leave the room. In the corridor, however, the brawl continues, so the doctor threatens to call security. The women calm down a bit. The doctor summons both of them to his office. There he explains that due to the critical condition of the patient, he has to obtain the consent of the legitimate spouse for the operation and other medical procedures, so since this completely incomprehensible dispute is taking place, he is forced to ask each of the candidates for a wife to provide the appropriate documentation as soon as possible. Eliette immediately goes home to get a document confirming that she and Jean-Claude have been married since 1980. However, the same day she learns that the woman she found at her dying husband's bedside has a marriage certificate dated 1982, so the hospital, guided by the documentation, recognizes Betsy Dominique as the legitimate spouse, while it excludes her, Eliette Dominique, from any decisions regarding patient Jean-Claude Dominique. Eliette has the feeling that all this is not really happening. Jean-Claude is her beloved husband and the father of her children, with whom she has been happily married for nearly 20 years. They live together and raise their children together, by the way, leading a prosperous and comfortable life, so how is it possible that another woman is able to confirm that she has been married to him for 17 years? Eliette begins to wonder if all this is not some nightmare dream from which she is about to wake up. Eliette met Jean-Claude Dominique in 1979. At the time she was working as a nurse in a hospital, Kings County Hospital, in the intensive care unit, and when the handsome young doctor with green eyes appeared there one day, Eliette's heart immediately beat harder. It soon became apparent that the charming doctor and the attractive nurse shared a common background, as they were each born and raised in Haiti. In addition, they were both equally ambitious and made it their goal in life to pursue their own careers. To her own delight, Eliette found that her interest was reciprocated. She and Jean-Claude began dating, and not much later her beloved moved in with her. At the time, the young woman had a tiny two-bedroom apartment in Crown Heights, located near the hospital. The fact that they didn't have to commute was a huge convenience in the daily lives of both of them. Eliette and Jean-Claude quickly decided that they wanted to always be together. They married the very next year, on May 20th, 1980 to be exact. Their son, Jean-Claude Jr., was born in 1982, and 2 years later their daughter Rachel was born. Shortly after her birth, Jean-Claude received a promotion at work, and with it a very attractive position. This fact, however, entailed that he was now forced to commute to a clinic located in another part of the city. Eliette, of course, had to give up her job to take care of the children, but both of them were very comfortable with such an arrangement. Her husband was earning an excellent salary and was rapidly climbing the career ladder. He also enjoyed an excellent reputation, both among colleagues and patients. He was regarded by all as an exceptionally kind, empathetic, and helpful person. Both of them were happy, and those around them considered them to be an almost perfect marriage. Jean-Claude was earning well enough that after a few years the family was able to move to a much larger apartment in Brooklyn, then move to a large two-story house, located on Long Island in one of the most prestigious neighborhoods of Baldwin Harbor. In doing so, the couple could afford not to sell their current place, located next to Kings County Hospital. Their dreams of a prosperous life came true, although, of course, it came at a considerable cost. The father of the family worked very hard and was usually not at home, and a day when he could have dinner with his relatives, for example, was a special day. Jean-Claude often spent the night at their former apartment in Brooklyn, instead of taking the rather long and tedious car ride home after work. Eliette was happy with this arrangement, as she knew that her husband was so tired after work that he could easily fall asleep at the wheel, and when Jean-Claude spent the night in their former apartment, his wife was always at ease about him. Eliette is completely devastated. She cannot ask her husband for an explanation, as he lies unconscious the whole time. More days pass and Jean-Claude, contrary to his wife's hopes, does not regain consciousness, so the woman is forced to get a grip and deal with the problems that have fallen on her. First of all, she is questioned by the police, as her husband's accident is under intensive investigation. The police also inform her of the findings so far. The accident took place just after Eliette Dominique left his apartment in Brooklyn. It was before midnight. The doctor was about to cross the street when suddenly a car, probably a Cadillac, moving at great speed, drove into him. The only witness to the incident stressed in his testimony that he got the impression that the driver of the car deliberately drove into this pedestrian. Jean-Claude was hit with such force that he flew several meters in the air. As a result of the impact and his fall to the pavement, he suffered severe brain damage and sustained wounds all over his body. The Cadillac was found by police near the scene, behind another building. There was, of course, no trace of the driver. It was confirmed that this was the car involved in the accident. It turned out that the car was reported stolen. Police found fingerprints in it that did not belong to the owner or anyone in his family. However, they could not be matched to any others in the register, thus it is already known that it will be very difficult to find the perpetrator of the accident. Eliette is finally forced to tell her teenage children about what she has learned, especially since visiting Jean-Claude in the hospital is not, as it should be, a simple and natural thing, as one must make sure to enter his room only when it is known that his other wife is not there. The children, having heard the information carefully given by their mother, are completely confused and as if they don't quite believe that their father has led a double life. Eliette, already recovering somewhat mentally, decides to have a serious conversation with Ali, her husband's beloved brother, as the woman comes to the conclusion that he must have known something about Jean-Claude's second marriage. Ali, however, is unusually reserved in his statements. He informs his sister-in-law that Betsy is his brother's former girlfriend, back when he was still living in Haiti. When asked if he has known all these years that Jean-Claude has two families, Ali refuses to explain, saying he won't explain himself about someone else's life. Eliette feels there is still hard to imagine trouble ahead. After 39 days in the hospital, Jean-Claude Dominique dies without regaining consciousness for a moment. Betsy Dominique, recognized as his legitimate spouse, begins to put the estate affairs in order. Eliette remains with her children in a legal situation that is completely unclear. Her husband has accumulated quite a large estate, which, it goes without saying, will go to his lawful spouse. It is not known, however, which of the two wives the court will recognize as such, but it is certain that there will be disputes about it. Eliette decides that she will not give up in the fight for the money, if only for the sake of her children, who, regardless of their father's lifestyle, should not be harmed. Meanwhile, she starts cleaning up their old apartment in Brooklyn. Among the various types of documents, she finds an envelope addressed to her. She is sure that she never had it in her hand, because the name of the notary who sent it to her does not mean anything. When Eliette opens the envelope and reads the contents of the letter, she is shocked again. She finds herself holding a divorce decree signed with her own name. The document shows that 17 years ago she obtained a divorce with Jean-Claude, which she allegedly applied for herself, so it turns out that for the last 2 decades she had no idea that she was a divorcee. The woman once again has the feeling that her life has been turned upside down. Recent ordeal has already made Eliette so resilient that now, after another shock, she is regaining her balance much faster and is soon taking action, going to a lawyer. The visit concerns a forged signature on a divorce decree. Eliette knows that the signature was not made by her. She had never even held such a document in her hand, and her husband had never once mentioned divorce in their life together. The case goes to court, and an expert graphologist checks the authenticity of the signature. The ruling is positive for Eliette. Her signature on the divorce decree was forged. This means that Jean-Claude's subsequent marriage to Betsy was illegal under the law. 15 months after the doctor's death, a verdict is passed. Betsy's marriage is declared null and void, and the court rules that Eliette alone was the legitimate wife of Jean-Claude Dominique. The court's ruling gives Eliette control over all the assets left by her husband, and it is considerable: several properties, several life insurances, one of them for over $1 million, and tens of thousands of dollars invested in investment funds. Some of this wealth is also given to the doctor's children from his second marriage, but Betsy herself does not fare well. It is clear that this situation is bound to give rise to enormous conflicts. The New Jersey house, for example, was jointly owned by Jean-Claude and Betsy, but now, according to the letter of the law, the doctor's share belongs to Eliette. It's about half the value of the property, and Betsy should pay it back to the rightful owner, but she can't afford it, and she feels a great deal of injustice about the situation. After talking to the attorney, Eliette decides to leave Betsy her share. It is very generous, but it soon reaches the rightful spouse that if she thought that due to this gift she would resolve further disputes about money, she was completely wrong. It turns out that in one of the properties of Jean-Claude, which is also located in Brooklyn, his brother Ali ran joint businesses with Betsy. This activity continues and brings quite a lot of income, and both Ali and Betsy believe that the acquisition of the property of this building by Eliette is also a great injustice. The battles for wealth continue, while Eliette simply has to start earning a living. She returns to work in her profession and works as a morning shift nurse in an intensive care unit at Interfaith Hospital in Brooklyn. It is October 30th, 2000, when Eliette leaves home for work as usual at 5 a.m. She heads towards the car and takes just a few steps when someone shoots 5 shots at her. 2 hit her in the head, 1 in the hand. Eliette only records the fact that 2 unknown men shot at her. The injured woman is still able to crawl back home, where, fortunately, she is found by children who are immediately calling the emergency. After a few minutes, the police are also there. One of the residents of the area says he saw 2 dark-skinned men in jackets fleeing the scene. The first was taller, the second was shorter and stocky. Men scattered in different directions. The police believe it was an attempted murder, which is why Eliette has special protection in the hospital room. The woman is able to testify the same day. She says she's sure she doesn't know any of the two men shooting at her. She also talks about quarrels in the family after the death of her husband and about the fact that his family turned away from her, and especially bad relations prevail between her and her brother-in-law Ali. Eliette lies in the hospital and slowly recovers, and the police conduct an intensive investigation. Eliette is shocked to learn that her brother-in-law, Eliette Dominique, has been arrested in connection with the attempted murder, as he was somehow involved in the case. The investigation brings further findings, and after some time the woman learns more details. Ali agreed with two friends to shoot Eliette. He promised to pay them a total of $10,000. He hated his sister-in-law and thought that Jean-Claude's money did not belong to her, because he considered Betsy his brother's real wife. Ali also resented Eliette's decision to sell the Brooklyn building where he ran the store with Betsy. Admitting to the murder order, Ali gives the reason that he wanted to protect his own life in this way, because in his opinion the death of his brother was not an accident, but somehow Eliette was involved. The man claims that after his brother he would be the next victim of his sister-in-law. These explanations are not believed by the police, as there is no reason to suspect Eliette of the attack on the life of Jean-Claude or Ali. On the contrary, Ali's hired men testify that in the long run he allegedly planned to murder Jean-Claude's children and then Betsy and her children. In February 2002, Eliette Dominique is found guilty of attempted murder and solicitation of murder and sentenced to prison terms between 21 and 25 years. His friend Marvin Guedin, who shot Eliette, is sentenced to 19 years in prison, while his accomplice Alexander Exama is sentenced to 12 years. After leaving the hospital, Eliette Dominique gives up her professional job. She travels a lot, thus fulfilling her old dreams, for which she now has time and resources. The widow also tries to watch over the careers of her children. She is very proud of them. Her son Jean-Claude becomes an engineer, her daughter a lawyer. As for the case of their father's mysterious accident, it is worth mentioning that it has not been solved to this day. The story of a bigamist who for 17 years managed to lead a double life and be the father of a family in two different homes, for two wives and two pairs of children who did not know each other, is certainly unique. Thank you for watching this video and goodbye for now.